Jane, thank you very much indeed. 8:10 is the time. The long march toward a new deal between technology and children in modern Britain may take a significant stride or two today. Certain features baked into social media apps, like infinite scrolling, will be disabled by default for 16 and 17-year-olds under new plans being announced. Those teenagers will be able to change their own settings if they wish. This would include a midnight curfew so that kids can't access social media, or certain AI chatbots between midnight and 6 a.m. Again, they could switch this off. There's also chatter about reducing access to AI services for under 18s, for instance by introducing mandatory breaks or restrictions on chatbots that offer mental health advice. And all this is further, of course, to a proposed ban on social media for under 16s announced by Keir Starmer last month. Will any of it work? Well, for over a decade, dilatory legislators around the world have talked tough but done little. Now, a new mood is sweeping much of the world with strong public health interventions from Europe to Australia. These new British proposals will probably be put to Parliament towards the end of this year and come into force next spring. In a moment, we'll speak to, or not a moment, but a few minutes, we'll speak to the Minister for AI and Online Safety, Kanishka Narayan. But before then, we're going to speak to some teenagers of the age that will be affected by these changes. So Alex, Phoebe and Confidence, who are 17, 16 and 17 years old, respectively. Alex, Phoebe and Confidence, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Alex, if I could just start with you, what do you make of this idea that you have this kind of option? So there'll be a default where it's not, some of these features are not available, but you'd have this option to kind of switch them off.
I think that with there being the option, I do think that a lot of people will exercise the right to choose the option. There are questions to be raised about whether there being an option defeats the point of there being a ban at all. I do think that the mere presence of the ban in itself and the mere presence of the limitation in itself may serve as a reminder for a lot of people as to exactly how much time they are spending on the apps.
That's really interesting. What do you use social media for, if you don't mind me asking, Alex, and which platforms?
So obviously, TikTok and Instagram, they're mainly entertainment. I use Snapchat, WhatsApp to communicate, but I also use Twitter to stay up to date with politics, like opinions, and the sort of general wider public. I always take that with a bit of a pinch of salt.
Okay, interesting. So you think that a change might send a good signal, but some people might opt out. Okay, let me turn to Phoebe. Phoebe, how often, if you're really honest, how much are you on social media most days?
Probably at least 3 hours on a day.
Okay, and what are you doing for those 3 hours, if you don't mind me asking? What sort of stuff?
Mainly scrolling, I think, on Instagram and TikTok, but talking to my friends as well, having that communication. Okay,
would you welcome, Phoebe, the idea that the government would say it's just not going to be possible for you to do that infinite scrolling? Would you welcome it be made harder for you to use social media for stuff that you know isn't very good for you?
I think that the intention behind the curfews is really positive, and I think that I would appreciate that, but I would also likely exercise my right to have it as an option.
So you might, if you might sort of find yourself heading to that default switch and switching it off so that you did potentially have the chance to do some of the things you fancy doing.
Yeah, I think so, because we also have, we've had the option to have screen time limits on our phones and downtimes for quite a few years now, and I don't know very many people that actually use that to control their time on the apps.
Oh, right. But do you think that's maybe an argument for changing the default so that when you get the phone or you get the apps in the first instance, the default is that you can't access to it and you actually got to make the conscious effort to change that default?
I think so. I think it's a positive change.
Okay. Do you mind me asking, does it affect your sleep much being on your phone, Phoebe? Do you find that kind of sometimes it's 10 o'clock, it's 11 o'clock, you could be reading something, even doing homeworks, perish a thought, but instead you're kind of scrolling on the internet and then you wake up in the morning a bit knackered because you didn't sleep till midnight?
I think I'm actually in quite a good place with it, where I turn off my phone quite early to go to sleep, but I know a lot of people that definitely have that problem, and I would rather still, be reading than scrolling, regardless of how much sleep I'm getting, but I definitely don't do as much of that as I'd like to.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Phoebe. Confidence, what about you? Do you mind me asking how often or how much you're on social media most days, Confidence?
I'm probably on social media a bit more for 4 to 6 hours, which sounds like quite a fair bit, but I do tend to limit myself on certain days.
4 to 6 hours is it's quite a bit
Yeah.
because I don't want to make you feel bad about this confidence, but if you're asleep for, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours and you're at school for 7 or 8 hours, that's kind of most of the rest of the time, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you feel about that? Are you cool with that? Do you wish it was a bit less? Are you comfortable with it?
Oh yeah, I do wish it was a bit less, but I think sometimes I use social media as a tool to like help with education. I think when you go to school, you tend to be quite like focused on education, doing school, and then when I go home, I just tend to use it as a way to like zone out and like have a break, I guess.
So what do you make of these changes in confidence? So one of the ideas, I'm about to turn to the minister who's suggesting them. What about this idea that things like infinite scrolling or midnight curfews will be introduced by default, and it'll be up to you to have to say, actually, no, I do want to scroll through, TikTok at 2 a.m, whatever it might be.
I think it's good that I would prefer to opt out, mainly because I think we should have full anatomy to like pick whether we want to scroll or not. I think some days people find themselves wanting to like stay on social media for a few more hours just to do whatever they want to do. And I think we're also able to make quite big decisions. We're like 16, 17, making decisions about uni and stuff. And I think if we're able to make those decisions, we should also be able to make decisions about like our screen time and stuff.
That's really, really interesting. Confidence, Phoebe. Thank you very much indeed. I just want to put one very final quick thought to you, Alex, which is to say, you're 17, Alex. Do you think that some of you and your mates, when you, a few years from now, look back on your childhood, you might say something I often hear teenagers say, which is that they say they wish they'd never discovered social media in the first place because it turns out they spent quite a lot of their childhood on their phones when they could have been out doing other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, as with a lot of really addictions, because I think that screen time, and especially these algorithms, are designed to be addictive. The positive effects that you see put in place, for example, bans or limitations, are often retrospectively correct. I know that there's things that I did when I was, say, 13, 14, that now I'd look back on and thought, yeah, that was really good. But when at the time it seemed very difficult and quite a difficult decision and a difficult action to fulfill because it is change. I do think that looking back on this when I'm 2021, I will probably be looking back on it and thinking that it was a really good thing that when I had my big exams, my A levels, I wasn't staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning on TikTok or Instagram.
I think that sounds pretty good to me. And I would say on behalf of your family and parents, I think that'd be a good way to go. Alex, Phoebe, Confidence, really appreciate your input and your time this morning. Thank you all very much indeed. Let's turn to Kanishka Narayan, who's the Minister for AI and Online Safety. Mr. Narayan, good morning.
Morning.
So if you're worried about the impact, did you get the chance to hear those?
I did.
Fantastic. Yeah. So if you're worried about the impact of social media for 16 and 17-year-olds, why would you give them the freedom to change their own settings?
Because of what Confidence said in your show as well. She said, we are old enough to make important decisions, learn about them. Yes, we want the help with it, but we want to be able to exercise our capability to make good judgments. That's exactly what we want. The thing I heard again and again from young people and families was, please don't make us have a cliff edge where you ban social media for under 16s and then it just drops off for 16, 17-year-olds. Today is about announcing a smoother slope rather than a cliff edge, but I think it's the right thing to entrust older teenagers with making good judgments with the right level of support in terms of defaults.
But isn't there a danger that you just make the government's position, or indeed the law, an ass, right? If thousands of teenagers go into their settings, so you've got this thing where it's by default you're not allowed to scroll at midnight. The government has this view that it's bad for you. You should be, like Alex was saying there, you should be preparing for exams, not looking at TikTok at 1 a.m. And yet people like Alex or Phoebe or Confidence can just go in and do it themselves. Doesn't that just undermine the authority of the government's position?
Well, two things to say to that. One, I think you'll have heard the thoughtfulness of Alex, Phoebe and Confidence, and we shouldn't do a disservice to teenagers to say that they're all going to turn it off, they don't want it. When we looked at some of the evidence from platforms that did introduce some default functions late last year, we found that 90% of teenagers kept them on. I think that's consistent with what I've heard teenagers tell me as well. But the second thing is, of course, this is but one part of an overall approach. There are still severe liabilities on companies so that even when kids and teenagers do get around defaults, that the experience they have is a safe and secure experience. We're not leveling down any of that. In fact, we're going to keep leveling that up as well. But this, I think, is an important move to support older teenagers with the right defaults.
One of the reasons that regulating technology has proved slow and difficult is it is just very, very hard to do. These companies are very powerful. Their products are very persuasive and very good at grabbing our attention. So can I just ask you about how some of these ideas might work? So given these technologies are designed around infinite scrolling, what do you mean when you say that you'd like to reduce or stop infinite scrolling?
So in particular, I think there are two features that are really egregious for young people and addictiveness. One is autoplay. You're watching a video and then it automatically starts playing the next one as well. Second, personalized targeting of the content that you're getting in terms of recommendations. We're going to turn both of those off by default for 16, 17-year-olds as well, because those two combined are the most addictive features that young people have told us about.
Does that technology, for instance, on the personalized ads, actually exist yet? How do you turn it off by default? How are you going to do that?
So a big thing that we're trying to do here is edge the tech companies to create much safer, much better products as well. There are some platforms where it already is the case that you can't get hyper-targeted content at you. You just sort of effectively watch a feed. That's a relatively static feed. We want all platforms to now move to a place where older teenagers have the option of getting rid of those addictive features.
Yeah, because personalized adverts based on the data that your sort of data footprint leaves because of what you've been viewing, that's really the basis of the business model for most of these companies where you don't pay for the service. You might pay for a premium top-up, but you don't pay for the service. You provide data through your kind of searches, and then they serve you personalized ads. So you're taking on the kind of fundamentals of the companies, which presumably the companies don't relish the prospect of.
Well, I think that's exactly right. But look, I don't want our children's future to be calculated on the basis of whether companies are making profits of them or not. The fundamental decision we're making is we are going to be on the side of young people and families in Britain. And if that means an economic cost for the tech companies, that's the right thing to do.
And how are you going to stop kids accessing AI chatbots that offer mental health advice?
Well, so already there's significant regulation. The big thing we're introducing today is a mandatory break in the duration that kids spend on AI chatbots. This is really important because the primary harm that a number of families pointed out to me was that they're worried that young people are engaging with chatbots often for hours and hours and ending up in a unhelpful degree of reliance on it as well. And so we're going to introduce mandatory breaks. The chatbots will have to make sure they understand when a person using them is a minor, and in those cases to ensure there are breaks in engagement as well.
Kanishka Narayan, Minister for AI and Online Safety, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
It's 22 minutes past 8.